Once upon a time, there lived a young woman named Cheta, the only child of her parents. Cheta's parents had been very wealthy, owning large companies and several properties. After their sudden demise, Cheta inherited everything: her father's massive company, beautiful houses, and a lavish lifestyle. But even with all that wealth, Cheta wasn't truly happy. There was one thing she didn't have: genuine love. Every man she dated only saw her money. They pretended to love her, but in the end, all they wanted was to use her for her wealth. Her last relationship had been the final straw. She had overheard her fiancé call her on the phone one evening. "Relax now, baby," he had said, laughing. "Once I get the money from Cheta, I will be done. You and I will be married soon." That conversation shattered her. How could someone who claimed to love her be plotting to take advantage of her? She had trusted him, yet he was only after her money like all others. She couldn't sleep that night. Her mind was filled with anger and sadness. She knew something had to change. The next morning, Cheta called her assistant Tolu to the house. Tolu had been her trusted confidant for years, and Cheta knew she could rely on her. "Tolu, I can't do this anymore," Cheta said. "Do what, madam?" Tolu asked with concern in her eyes. "These men, they all come into my life for one thing: money, not love. They pretend, lie, and deceive me. I am done." "So what do you want to do now?" Tolu asked cautiously. Cheta took a deep breath. "I need to disappear. I want to find someone who loves me for me, not my wealth." Tolu's eyes widened. "Disappear? Madam, how?" "I am going out of Lagos. I will go to another city, disguise myself as a blind beggar. Let me see who will love me without knowing what I have." Tolu was shocked. "Blind beggar? Ah, are you sure about this?" "I am sure. I've made up my mind. I will delegate my responsibilities at the company to you while I am gone. I need to know what true love feels like. As the only child of my late parents, I don't want to fall into wrong hands." Tolu nodded slowly. "Okay, but please be careful." And just like that, Cheta vanished from the life of luxury, stepping into a world she had never known. Days later, in a small city far from Lagos, Cheta sat on the roadside, dressed in tattered clothes. Her face looked worn, with dark sunglasses covering her eyes and a walking stick resting beside her. She had never begged for anything in her life, but here she was, pretending to be a blind beggar. It wasn't easy. People walked past her without a second glance. Some muttered words under their breath, and others looked at her with pity. But this was the life she had chosen, and she was determined to see it through. As the sun began to set, a young man named Osita walked past her. Osita wasn't rich. He ran a small provision store just a few streets away. Life had been tough for him, but he always found a way to keep going. When he saw Cheta sitting there, something in him stopped him from walking past. He paused, looked back, and then turned around. He hesitated before approaching her, unsure if he should get involved. But seeing her sitting there alone melted his heart. Finally, he moved closer. "Hello, my sister," Osita said softly, squatting in front of her. "What's your name?" Cheta remained silent for a moment, sticking to her plan. "My name is Cheta." Osita nodded. "Cheta, what happened to you? Why are you here like this?" Cheta sighed deeply, keeping up with the story she had prepared. "I lost my sight many years ago. I don't have anyone to help me. No family, no friends. I've been on my own ever since." Osita felt choked with emotion. No one? You mean you don't have anybody at all? Cheta shook her head. Yes, sir, I don't have anyone. He looked at her, pity welling up in his heart. He didn't have much himself, but the thought of leaving her there didn't sit right with him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few currency notes. It wasn't much, but it was all he could spare. Take this, he said, handing her the money. It's not a lot, but it can buy you something to eat. Cheta hesitated, feeling a mix of guilt and gratitude. Thank you, she said softly. Osita stood up, ready to walk away, but his heart wouldn't let him. He took a few steps, then stopped. He looked back at Cheta. His mind was racing. How can I leave her like this? He thought about his one-room apartment. There wasn't much space, but surely there had to be something more he could do. After a moment, an idea struck him. His younger sister Ebere lived nearby and had her own place. Maybe Ebere could help. He quickly pulled out his phone and called her. Ebere, please, I need your help. Ebere's voice sounded tired. She was just returning from work. What is it, Osita? I met someone, a blind lady. She has nowhere to go. Can you let her stay with you for a few days? Just until I figure something out. Osita, are you serious? A stranger? How do I know it's safe to keep her here? Please, Ebere, he pleaded. I wouldn't ask if I didn't think it was important. Ebere hesitated. Okay, fine, but only for a few days, oh. I don't want any problems. Osita smiled, relieved. Thank you, sis. I owe you one. He went back to Cheta, who was still sitting in the same spot. She was surprised to see him again. I've found a place for you to stay, he said. It's not much, but it's better than sleeping on the street. Cheta blinked behind her sunglasses. Her heart was beating fast. This man, who barely knew her, was offering her kindness she had never experienced. She nodded, fighting her tears back. I don't know how to thank you. May God bless you, sir. Osita smiled. No need to thank me. Let's just get you to a safer place. As they walked, Cheta's mind raced. She had planned to keep up this act for a while, but the kindness of this stranger was making her question everything. Together, they made their way to Ebere's house. It wasn't far, but every step felt heavy for Cheta. She was touched by Osita's kindness. Yet, the guilt of lying about her identity haunted her. She reminded herself that this was all part of her plan. She had to find someone who truly cared for her, not her wealth. When they arrived at Ebere's small apartment, Osita knocked and Ebere opened the door, looking at Cheta with cautious eyes. Cheta could feel Ebere's hesitation, but she smiled weakly. Thank you so much for letting me stay, Cheta said. Ebere nodded, still unsure. You are welcome. Just make yourself comfortable. It's a small place, but we will manage. Cheta was led inside, and for the first time in her life, she realized what it felt like to depend on the kindness of strangers. Cheta settled into Ebere's home, but things were not entirely comfortable. Ebere, who had agreed to take her in, was distant. She didn't say much and kept her distance, almost as if she didn't fully trust Cheta. But Cheta couldn't blame her. After all, they barely knew each other, and here she was, pretending to be blind and helpless. But Osita was different. Every evening, without fail, he would stop by after closing from his provision store. Sometimes he would bring food from the local food booker. Other times, he would come with ingredients to cook. One evening, after Osita brought food from the booker, he sat with them as they ate. The small table in Ebere's house was filled with plates of jollof rice and fried fish. Ebere, Osita started. Thank you for helping out. I know this was a bit sudden. Ebere, still not looking too happy, said, It's fine, but Osita, we can't keep her here forever. What's the plan? Osita glanced at Cheta, who was eating quietly. He felt bad for her, and his mind was already racing with ideas. I will figure something out soon. I just don't want her to be on the streets. Cheta listened to their conversation. Her heart was heavy with guilt. How long could she keep lying to them? She could feel the weight of her secret pressing down on her, but she knew she had to stick to her plan, at least for a little longer. Days passed and Osita continued to check on Cheta every evening. He even started cooking more often, preparing simple meals like yam porridge and plantain. He wasn't the best cook, but his efforts were heartwarming. Cheta found herself smiling more whenever he was around. She was beginning to feel a sense of belonging in this small humble home. Ebere was still distant, but she had warmed up slightly, at least enough to engage in short conversations with Cheta. One quiet night, Osita lay on his small bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind kept drifting to Cheta. She had been living with Ebere for some time now, and though things were not perfect, he was glad she had somewhere to stay. But something was bothering him, Cheta's blindness. She had mentioned needing surgery to regain her sight, but Osita knew such surgeries cost a lot of money. His small provision store could never raise that kind of money, not even if he worked for decades. But as he lay there, his thoughts wandered to the piece of land his father had left him in the village. It wasn't much, just a small plot, but it was the only thing his father had given him before he passed. Could he really sell it to help Cheta? The idea weighed heavily on his heart, but every time he thought about the possibility of Cheta sitting in the dark forever, his heart ached. The next morning, Osita made his way to Ebere's house as usual, but today he had something important to discuss. Ebere, there is something I need to talk to you about, Osita said, sitting down in the small living room. Ebere was preparing to leave for work, but the serious look on Osita's face made her pause. What is it? Osita hesitated, then spoke. I've been thinking about Cheta, about her surgery. She needs money to see again. And I was thinking, maybe I could sell the land in the village. Ebere froze, her eyes wide. What? You want to sell Papa's land? Osita, that's the only thing he left you. And for what? A woman we barely know? I know, Ebere. I know. But she has nobody. We can't just leave her like this, Osita said, his voice filled with emotion. If it were you or me in her position, wouldn't we hope someone would help us too? Ebere shook her head, her face a mix of frustration and worry. I understand, Osita, but think about it. Once you sell that land, it's gone. You can never get it back. And what will you do if things don't work out? How will you survive? Osita looked down. I've made up my mind, Ebere. I can't leave her like this. Unknown to both of them, Cheta was in the next room and had overheard every word. She sat on the edge of the bed, tears rolling down her cheeks. She had never expected this. No one had ever been willing to sacrifice so much for her. It was too much, and she knew she couldn't keep lying to them. That evening, Osita came over to Ebere's house as usual. He had brought ingredients to cook yam porridge. But as he was busy chopping the vegetables in the kitchen, Cheta quietly made her way to the door. She stood there, her walking stick slightly tapping on the floor. Her heart was heavy with guilt. Osita, she called softly. He looked back, surprised to see her standing there. Cheta, what is it? You are supposed to be resting. Cheta took a deep breath, trying to keep her nerves steady. She had to come clean, no matter what. I overheard your conversation with Ebere earlier, she said quietly. Osita frowned, unsure of what she was talking about. Conversation? What conversation? Cheta's hands trembled as she gripped her walking stick. You want to sell your land to help me see again? Osita's face softened. Yes, Cheta, I've been thinking about it for a while now. It's the only thing I have to give, and if it can help you, then why not? Cheta's eyes welled up with tears. She couldn't take it anymore. Osita, I I need to tell you something. Something important. Osita stopped chopping and turned to face her fully. What is it? Cheta took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. I I am not blind, she said. I've been pretending. Osita blinked, his face suddenly filled with confusion. What do you mean? You are not blind? But, but you said I lied. Cheta interrupted. I am not who you think I am. I am not a poor, helpless beggar. I am a rich woman looking for true love. Osita's eyes widened, and for a moment he was completely silent, as if trying to process what he had just heard. You've been lying to us this whole time? He asked. His voice was low but filled with hurt. Cheta nodded, tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean to deceive you. I just wanted to find someone who cared for me, for who I am, not my money. Every man I've ever met only wanted to use me. So I left Lagos and came here pretending to be blind to see if anyone would love me for me. Osita shook his head, taking a step back. So, all this time we've been helping you, feeling sorry for you. It was all a lie? You made a fool of us, Cheta. I am sorry, Cheta cried, her voice breaking. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You've been so kind to me, and I didn't know how to tell you the truth. Osita stared at her, his face a mix of anger and betrayal. How could you do this? I was going to sell the only thing my father left me. And for what? A lie? Cheta dropped her walking stick and fell to her knees, sobbing. I am sorry. I am sorry, Osita. I am so sorry. Osita turned away, his heart heavy with disappointment. I need some time to think, he muttered, his voice cold. Without another word, he walked out of the kitchen, leaving Cheta on the floor, crying. As he left the house, a berry who had been listening from the living room stepped into the kitchen. She looked down at Cheta, who was still weeping. You know, Cheta, you've made things worse for yourself. My brother doesn't deserve this. Cheta looked up at Ebere, her face wet with tears. I know, I've hurt him. I hate myself for it. Ebere sighed and crossed her arms. You better hope he forgives you, because right now he's heartbroken. With that, Ebere turned and left the kitchen, leaving Cheta to her guilt and tears. Days passed, and Cheta felt the weight of her actions more than ever. Osita had stopped coming by, and Ebere barely spoke to her. The house felt cold and empty. Cheta felt overwhelmed by all that had happened, but was unsure how to repair the damage she had caused. One evening, Ebere came home early from work. She found Cheta sitting quietly on the floor. Something about the sight softened her heart. She walked over and sat beside her. Why did you do it? Ebere asked. Why lie to us like that? Cheta looked at her, her face tired from days of crying. Ebere, I was desperate, she began. I've been used and hurt by so many people. Every man I've ever met only cared about my money. I didn't want to be tricked again. I wanted to find someone who could love me for me, not because of money. Ebere sighed deeply, her anger slowly fading. You shouldn't have lied to us. You hurt Osita. He was ready to sell his land for you, Cheta. Do you know how much that land means to him? Cheta nodded, her tears flowing again. I know. That's why I was going to stop him before he did it. I didn't want him to sacrifice so much for a lie. But I didn't know how to come clean. I've made such a mess. Ebere looked at her for a long moment, then shook her head softly. You've put us in a difficult situation, Cheta, but I can understand why you did it. You were just looking for something real. Cheta nodded. Yes, Ebere, thank you for understanding. Ebere continued. I may not agree with how you went about it, but I get it. It's not easy when people take advantage of you, but you should have trusted us. Osita has a good heart. We would still have helped you without all this. Cheta sniffed and wiped her tears. I know. I should have told you the truth from the start. I've been so scared of losing the kindness you both showed me. Ebere sighed again, but this time it was softer. She gently placed her hand on Cheta's shoulder. I'm not saying it will be easy to fix things with Osita, but I will try to help. Just give him some time. He is hot right now. Cheta looked at her with gratitude. Thank you, Ebere. I don't deserve your kindness. Ebere gave a small smile. You messed up, yes, but everyone deserves a second chance if they are truly sorry. Let's just hope Osita feels the same. Cheta smiled weakly, feeling for the first time in days that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. She was already in love with Osita, and she knew Osita loves her too. Ebere had made up her mind that Cheta deserved a second chance. She knew Osita was hurt, but deep down, she could see how much he cared for Cheta. So she came up with a plan. One evening after work, Ebere called Osita. Brother, please come over tonight. Ebere said. Cheta has something important to say. Osita hesitated. He had been avoiding Cheta since the truth came out. He was angry, yes, but there was something else. He missed her. After a long pause, he finally agreed. Later that night, Osita arrived at Ebere's small apartment. His heart was heavy, but he forced himself to enter. Cheta was standing by the corner, her head bowed. As soon as he stepped in, she turned to face him, tears already streaming down her face. Osita, she began, her voice trembling. I know I hurt you deeply. I lied about who I was, and I deceived you, but I didn't do it to hurt you. I only wanted to know if someone could love me without knowing my background. Osita crossed his arms, his face still hard. Cheta, it's not the lie that broke me. It's that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth when we took you in. You watched me give everything, almost sell my land, and you still kept quiet. Cheta nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I know, and I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was scared too. I've been hurt so many times, and I didn't know how to stop lying once I started. Osita stared at her for a long moment. The room was quiet. Ebere, who had been watching from the side, finally spoke. Osita, she's truly sorry, Ebere said softly. She made a mistake, but it doesn't mean she didn't care for you. I've watched her cry every night since you stopped coming around. She knows she's wrong. She just wants to make things right. Osita sighed, rubbing his hand over his face. I don't know, Ebere. It's hard to forget everything that happened. Cheta stepped forward. I'm begging you, Osita. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, give me a chance to make it right. I don't want to lose the first real love I've ever known. Osita's heart softened at her words. He looked at her and saw not the woman who had lied, but the woman who was scared and desperate to be loved. Slowly, he walked up to her and took her hand. I won't lie, he said quietly. It's going to take time to heal from this, but I care about you too, Cheta, more than I've cared for anyone in a long time. If you're willing to be honest with me from now on, I will give this another chance. Cheta nodded eagerly. I promise, Osita, no more lies, no more secrets. Ebere smiled, watching two of them reconcile. That's more like it, she said, clapping her hands lightly. Now, can we all sit down and eat? I am starving. They all laughed, and for the first time in days, the air felt lighter. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. After that night, things slowly started to get better. Osita forgave Cheta, and their bond grew even stronger. But the biggest surprise came when Cheta decided to tell them the real story. One afternoon, she sat Osita and Ebere down. There's something else you both need to know, she began, her voice steady. I am not just any girl from Lagos. My father was a billionaire, and I inherited his entire company when he passed away. Osita and Ebere exchanged shocked looks. Wait, what? Osita asked, clearly stunned. Cheta nodded. It's true. I've lived my life surrounded by wealth, but none of it made me happy. Every man I met saw me as a ticket to riches. That's why I came here pretending to be poor and blind, hoping to find someone who loved me genuinely. Osita blinked, trying to process what he was hearing. You're that rich? Cheta smiled a little. Yes, but I don't care about the money. What matters to me is that I finally found someone, two people actually, who cared about me beyond the wealth. And I want to give back to you both for everything you've done for me. I want you to move back to Lagos with me. Osita and Ebere sat there, stunned. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. It was like a dream, one that neither of them had ever imagined. Cheta, are you serious? Osita asked, still in disbelief. I am serious. You both gave me something money can't buy. Now it's my turn to give back. Ebere smiled. Well, I won't say no to that too. Osita smiled too, but his eyes was filled with gratitude. Cheta, I don't even know what to say. Thank you. Thank you for everything. A few days later, Osita, Ebere, and Cheta all moved to Lagos. Cheta established a mega mart for Osita, and Ebere started a new job at Cheta's company. The three of them had built something special, one based on love, trust, and honesty. Osita and Cheta got married in a simple ceremony with a beret by their side. For the first time in a long time, Cheta finally felt she had found what she had been searching for all along, a real home and a real love. Hey, lovelies! Thank you so much for watching to the end of this story. If you enjoyed the story, please share your thoughts in the comments. I'll be there to respond to your comments. And please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. There's another interesting story that I will upload in a few days, so subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified immediately I upload it. Thank you so much for watching and see you in my next story.